A press conference has just taken place, and uh, President, the president of Azerbaijan, has made some serious demands. The Azerbaijan Airlines flight en route from Baku to Grozny that crashed in Aktu in Kazakhstan, and the 38 fatalities of 29 survivors, is still the subject of controversy, stemming from evidence that points directly to Russian responsibility. The background of the tensions are the relationship between Azerbaijan and Russia, and the wider context of regional stability that is likely now from the ongoing drone activity in Russian airspace. The Azerbaijani president, Ilhan Aliyev, has made a strong statement criticizing Russia's handling of the incident. He's said, and a lot of this comes from Turkish media, the impact might have been birds when it first occurred. It might have been understood to have been a bird attack, um, but but nobody would believe that our friend and ally could do such a thing as to attack one of our civilian aircrafts. Unfortunately, uh, the Russian authorities have dwelt too long on the bird story, and so that rather begs the question about whether or not it's true. What upsets us most about the Russian situation is the legal statements recently, which haven't come out in the British press, that there was a gas explosion that took place on the plane. This clearly shows, says the Azerbaijani president, this clearly shows the Russian efforts to cover up the story. Our plane was shot down accidentally. There was no terror attack, and it wasn't our fault. If Russia is to be a friendly nation, then it should apologise. Unfortunately, the last 3 days, we've only heard stupid answers. It's very clear Russia wants to cover up the situation. And after this accident, Russia has said that it wants to examine the situation to have free access for its independent aviation authority to research and to investigate. Russia wants its authority to examine the plane. We say no, categorically no, because this authority is heavily staffed by the Kremlin elite. Every single person in that authority is part of that elite. If we saw immediately after the crash the Russians doing something correct and not hiding, then we might have said yes to that investigation, but we won't accept it now. Instead, all we see is a cover-up. Aliyev could not be clearer. He then says what he wants. He says he wants, 1, a proper apology; 2, for the people who have done this to confess their crime; and 3, for those who committed the crime to be punished. Then there must be compensation for the injured and the dead. He then goes on and he says, we got the apology, or at least what amounts to an apology. He now hopes for the other demands to be forthcoming, and he says this is the least that an international that would be expected in an international relationship, and what normal humans can expect. And he talks in detail about the fact that the plane was shot down. He insists on an investigation of the black boxes. His criticism of Russia's attempt to sweep the matter under the rug is extraordinary language from somebody who is regarded as the president of one of Russia's satellite states. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency, of course, blames Ukrainian drones and claims of offering alternative landing sites to the crew, but there's no evidence of that. It's refuted by Azerbaijani sources, and in any case, if there were drones in the area, then it's up to the Russian aviation authorities to have to have closed the airspace to civilian aircraft. They didn't do this. Putin's acknowledgement of a tragic incident, Putin's use of the passive voice to avoid active responsibility is an attempt to duck direct acceptance of any responsibility. And the implications of a diplomatic apology without substantial accountability is just rhetoric. The evidence is clear. The damage from the missile attack near Grozny, the foreign particles and the holes in the fuselage indicate an external attack. And Azerbaijan refrains from labelling the incident as intentional, but expects accountability to be taken by the Russian authorities, particularly with this story about the Chechen leader and his nephew bragging about how many drones his anti-aircraft missile system has managed to take down. There comes a point when the nepotism and the central control operated by the Kremlin and its cronies backfires, and this is a good example of that, because everything is interlinked. And that's why Aliyev is quite right to draw attention to the 3 days of silence from the Kremlin. The strain caused by Russia's evasion of responsibility, or alleged evasion of responsibility, is going to be significant. Azerbaijan's alignment with international allies will become more pressing. And statements by Zelensky calling today for Russian transparency add to this pressure. The UK and the EU also criticise Russia's recklessness. But it's that 3-day gap before Russia's official response that raises questions about credibility. And within that, we can now start to see other stories in the same light, with Russia's denials, with the pause while Russia gets its story right. Suddenly, the Kremlin looks like an almighty liar. Not just this time, but again and again and again. The Baku story now invites us to look again at the propaganda that Russia puts out about Bucha and about many of the attacks directly on civilian sites in Ukraine. Oh, this is an accident. No, it's not. We know it's not. And now there is evidence of Russia lying. It makes all those little lies, all those countless lies over the last few years, seem so much more credible as deceit. They seem so much more that is the correct interpretation. Don't believe the propaganda, because the propaganda, Russia's whining means nothing now. The Kremlin's whining, the Kremlin's words, the rhetoric is worthless. Russia is a liar. And it lies not only to its enemies, it lies to its friends as well, because it's ruled by a tiny elite of frightened individuals who don't quite know what to do about the reality that their erstwhile leader is dead in a fridge somewhere in, either under the Kremlin or in one of the villages where he's got a mansion. Azerbaijan's focus on establishing facts now are important, and the black box analysis will demonstrate surely that Russia has lied, and the demands for Russia to accept and rectify matters to avoid future tragedies is just a first step. The crash is a microcosm of a larger global trust issue between Russia and its neighbours and Russia and the rest of the world, and the importance here of international cooperation in investigating and preventing such incidents is vital.